Hi, everyone. We are representing Positive to launch another podcast in our vet school application series. I am Christy, the co-founder of Positive, and I'm also here with Rachel, the founder.
We are here with Talia today, and she's a rising second year vet student at the Uni of Melbourne. So, could you please start off by introducing yourself?
Hi everyone, I am Talia. I'm currently doing my Doctor of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Melbourne. I am a first year. I moved here from Sydney where I did my first degree. And yeah,
We are going to start off by talking about like college application tips and what the vet school is like. What did you think of the curriculum during your first year at the Uni of Melbourne? And are there any particular things that you like or dislike?
yeah, that's a good question. Overall, the curriculum has definitely been quite good. And I think a big reason why I decided to come here was the reputation. It's mostly broken down into different systems. So, for example, the cardiovascular system, the respiratory system. I know every university doesn't do it like that. I've found that really good because you basically start with the normal function of an organ, for example, and then you go into the dysfunction later on. Other than that, anything I've disliked, there are definitely some generic subjects that I don't love as much because, of course, there is a focus on production animals. And personally, for me, I'm a small animal person, so it's not quite my interest, but it would definitely interest some other people that are actually into production animals.
Yeah, is that the reason why you went to Melbourne instead of staying in Sydney for uni?
I would love to say it was well organized. I applied kind of on a whim to Melbourne, and I didn't tell anyone that I had applied because I just didn't think I was going to get in. And when it happened, I was accepted here, but unfortunately, I was rejected from Sydney. So it
Oh,
was a situation of wait a year or come here.
mhm.
And Melbourne has such a good reputation anyway that I figured I was just going to make the leap and see what happened.
Do you ever consider applying to Ivy schools or like ones in the UK, or were you set on staying in Australia the whole time?
I thought about it. I did look into it, but they are very competitive. And I think overall, I found it to be a bit too expensive for me, just a bit out of the budget.
You also talked about being interested in like small animals and emergency medicine, right? Is that
Mhm.
what you want to work with in the future when you graduate vet school?
Yeah, so at the moment, yes, that is what I'm thinking. I'm not sure if I mentioned it to you guys, but I've been working in emergency for the past year. So I got very attached to that job as I worked in that. And I think prior to that, I never thought about emergency medicine. I always thought about just general practice. After doing that, I kind of enjoy the chaos, as weird as that probably sounds. Having started the degree, I actually don't mind horses, to be honest. I know I said I don't like production animals, but race horses could be something interesting. But obviously, I'm a first year, so I'm just kind of seeing what happens and trying not to close every door that comes my way.
Yeah, I get it. Is there a reason why you particularly like small animals instead of production animals or exotics or anything else?
Yeah, I'll give you two reasons. I have a more general reason, which is, of course, I grew up with dogs, so I naturally just gravitate towards small animals. But, and this comes more from my first degree where I did that at the University of Sydney, but I did a lot of placements with production animals. And I don't mind them in general,
Mhm.
but I find that the industry is kind of hard to get into and they tend to be very close knit, which is probably fair enough as someone that's grown up in the city and doesn't know as much about animals. But the idea of getting into that industry definitely does scare me in comparison. And it's probably a bit more focused on production of, meat, production of different products rather than fixing the animal just because there's, a sense of companionship and love.
Yeah, what do you mean by hard to get into? Like, is it really competitive?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily hard to get into because they do really want production animal vets because there isn't too many out there at the moment. But I find that when you go onto a farm, for example, unless you've grown up on a farm and you've grown up with those animals, they're not necessarily the easiest to click with because I think they just prefer people that know exactly what they're doing. It's just kind of hard to crack into that, and you kind of just have to throw everything in there to kind of get into it.
Yeah, with like small animals, did you get any like similar work experience before, like in high school or like in your first year?
In high school, no. That's something I'd probably recommend to anyone is get more experience as soon as possible because it is so helpful. But I was so focused on my grades, I never did that. And I had the year prior to now, I wasn't doing anything because I was rejected from vet school. So I had a whole year off. So I worked full time in the industry. I did a bunch of different volunteering. I tried to jam pack everything into my application for this cycle that I got in.
Would you recommend others to take a gap year to get into vet school? Because I'm planning to do that.
Um,
I'm not too sure.
are you?
Yeah, just to be more experienced.
I will say at the time, I hated the idea of it. I did not want to take a gap year. But it ended up being one of the most beneficial things for me because the amount of experience and things I saw, especially in emergency where you're just thrown into situations, I find that even little practical tasks in vet school, you understand so much better and it takes way less time to learn it properly. And even if you're learning theory, for example, you might not have known the theory, of course, when you were working on the day-to-day job, but you can think back to things you saw and go, oh my God, that makes sense now why they did what they did. And it all just kind of fits together a bit easier when you have had that time. On the same hand, I wouldn't necessarily say you have to have a gap year. You can also just go straight into it and still learn.
Why do you hate it in the beginning though? I feel like people think that taking a gap year as making you behind in everything because you're not doing school for a year.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I thought.
Yeah.
I think it was the attitude that coming out of high school, I wanted to be one of those future vets that only took 6 years, did a double degree, and was, really fresh and young. Because I thought, at the time, of course, I thought 24 was so old, which is pretty much my age now. So clearly not true. But by the time I finish now, it'll have taken me, including the gap year, about 9 years, which if you told me that at 18, I probably would have been horrified. But I think the amount of experience you build up in that time, or at least I'm hoping, it will make me a more confident vet by the end.
Aside from the 6 years, you do have a few more years, right, out of vet school to specialize in like a specific species of animals.
I haven't really decided if I want to specialize, just because it'll take so much more time, which again is probably thinking back to the exact same things I was thinking in high school. I've thought about doing cardiology, which is not exactly what you were saying. It's not a specific species, but I think if I went down that path, I'd probably go more focused on organ rather than just one specific species.
Yeah. Are you planning to do your master's or like PhD after you graduate?
As of right now, no. Probably because this degree is so intense. I can't imagine jumping straight into a PhD. Like, all respect to anyone that does it, but I'm so stressed now. I think I need a break after this.
Yeah, I heard it's really stressful. And I heard
Mm.
that it's really competitive too compared to human medicine. Like people say it's easier than human medicine, but I feel like it's just as hard because you've got so much to memorize.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest parts is even if, for example, I had an exam recently on the kidney. And I had to know all of the different bits and bobs of every single species kidney. And all of us that were trying to study it were sitting there going, oh, it would be so much easier if it was just one human and that's it. It always makes me laugh hearing that human medicine is easier because I'm not going to compare. I've not done human medicine, but it's definitely not easier. We're at least on the same field. It's just so much more species.
I've heard before going into like any vet schools in Australia, you need to do a Casper test where it's more testing you on like ethics and your emotional intelligence. So is it also the same for the interview process? Do they want to scope out on what are your ethics and who you really are more than your knowledge about the field?
Yeah, so I've had to sit the Casper test twice now, so I'm quite familiar with it. And I remember the first time I did it, it really shocked me that all the questions have nothing to do with vet school. They would be the most random questions, such as, oh, you're living with a roommate and you've got a conflict, and how do you resolve it and all that. So it really is trying to test your empathy and all that. And I think what most places don't say is they're trying to make sure that you're not sitting there making assumptions and that you can put yourself in other people's shoes. So they want you to use all these different scenarios on the day and basically say, like, oh, if this person's going through something, then I would be doing this. If something else is happening, then I would be doing this. They basically want you to just show that you're thinking of multiple different things that could be going on and that you have that empathy and you're not just putting it all into one box and assuming what someone else is going through. But it does definitely feel a bit random when you first do it.
Like the questions are not related at all to animals.
Not at all. They were completely random. not, I don't even think one mentioned an animal at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The one in Edinburgh is more focused on animals. There's a lot of scenario questions, and then they would ask you if the owner asks you to put her dog to sleep, but then the dog is like completely fine, like we still do it. So I'm not sure how to answer that, to be honest.
To be fair, that feels a lot harder than what I did. I think I would prefer mine because at least you can give really generic answers, and that feels very like in your face almost.
It's like you need to be a vet already, and you're not even in first year.
Yeah, like give me 4 years. I don't even know if 4 years is going to be enough to make me confident. Like,
Moving on, so do you think if you have a chance to do everything differently, will you still choose your degree right now, or will you change degrees? Or is there anything else you're more interested in?
it would be probably a bit of a cop out to say Sydney because it would it would save me so much more money to be living with my parents still. But I think the experiences I've gotten here are so worth it. And I never would have expected to move here and just start a whole different degree here. But it has been so amazing. And I would encourage anyone to take that leap and just go for it because I've learnt so much this year already. Like, I can't imagine how much more is going to change over the next three.
Was it really hard for you to go from Sydney to Melbourne and maybe not knowing anyone in Melbourne before that?
Yeah, so I'd barely visited Melbourne before. I haven't really traveled around Australia, ironically. I think it was harder for me because I'd always lived with my parents as well, so I'd never lived alone. So I kind of just made this random leap within a month, and my poor parents didn't even know that I'd applied to Melbourne. So it was probably a shock for them too. I think moving to any place, what I heard was the first 3 months are the hardest. And I think that's completely true. The first 3 months are definitely the hardest. You don't know anyone, you don't know anything around you. It's so hard at first. But now that I've established, obviously, friends in my course and I kind of know where to go, it is a lot easier and it's so much more fun now.
Back when you were in high school, were there a lot of people in your year who want to do vet med, or is it just like you and that's it?
It's just me.
Yeah, yeah, same for me. There's barely anyone who want to do vet. Like everyone wants to do medicine.
Yeah. Everyone said there's no money in it. Why would I do it? And I was like, oh, but I love animals. I think I've got one person from my high school that ended up becoming a vet nurse, but she never had interest in that, I believe, in high school. But
Do you want to be a vet surgeon then after you graduate?
I'm not sure because as much as I've seen surgeries from a distance working in emergency, I've never actually been in the room. And I look forward to doing that further down the line because it is something I've considered. But as of right now, I'm not really sure. I would definitely consider it though.
Do you have any advice for any high school students who want to do vet med? For someone, what type of work experience they should do, or what kind of misconceptions that you usually get before you go into vet school?
Well, I know I mentioned this before, but definitely get experience as soon as possible. And I know that's really easy to say because at the time I was like, I'm so busy, I can't do anything. But if you can find any time to volunteer, even if it's at a local shelter, you could walk dogs for, an hour, and that will start giving you animal handling experience that can really help you later on. Especially what I don't think people tell high school students enough is the diversity of experiences that they prefer to see. So they don't love seeing just small animals. And I probably learnt this a bit too late in my application process, but they want to see that you also tried large animals. You tried some wildlife, which in Australia you can do this thing called wires, which is a really easy way to just throw some wildlife hours on. But they love seeing that diversity and that you've gone across multiple different species because they see it as a high level of commitment. So I would definitely recommend to try and get as much as you can. I know it can be difficult getting large animals if you're like me and you're from, the middle of the city or something. Even just horses, you can usually find a riding academy or something that's near a city that you can just put your hand up and say, hey, I'll work for free just to get a couple of hours in. But definitely that.
You mentioned you tried working in emergency. Is there any like memorable experience you saw during that time?
Yes, definitely. I'll say my most memorable is probably CPR is the only thing I can think of right now, which feels so violent to be saying. But it was a situation where I had to learn it literally on the job because I worked night shifts. I worked 4 p.m. to midnight at least. And it was a situation of there was only three people on the floor, so I had to go in and do it. And it was the most bizarre way to learn CPR on the spot. But it also made me learn really quickly. So I guess, Is it the best way to learn? Maybe not, but I also learnt it, so
You had to do CPR on the dog or the cat straight away.
yeah. Which I mean, now I can do it at least, but wasn't a situation I thought I would randomly get into when I took the job.
Was it before you went into vet school during your gap year?
Yeah, it was during my gap year, so I really had no idea what I was doing.
What were the other cases though? Because I went to a small animal hospital before and then they weren't really like emergency cases, so it was so chill the whole time. I had like a couple cases and like surgeries and that's it.
I guess it definitely depends on the time of year. At least in Australia, summer is definitely your hotspot for cases. You get a lot of tick cases, paralysis tick especially. Winter tends to be a drop. I think that's probably across most clinics. You get, of course, in Australia, you're so hot, you get a lot of heat stroke cases. You get a lot of, like, unfortunately, hit by cars, especially near New Year's and everything. And then obviously the really common one is dogs that will eat literally anything that they see and then they need to throw it up. I've seen so many bizarre things come out in throw up, socks, tampons, batteries. There's so many things.
So during your gap year, like aside from the emergency hospital, where else did you go to do the work experience?
I was lucky. I kind of avoided doing extra production animal during that year because I had done so much placements in my previous degree. But what I did do was there was a shelter close to my house. So every Sunday I just walked some dogs, handled cats, and every other week I drove out to a greyhound rescue that literally just rescued greyhounds from the racing industry, and I would volunteer with them. And then, as I mentioned, because I wanted to add some wildlife into my application, I did the whole wires thing, which is literally just pretty much picking up sick wildlife and transporting them to a vet. I think that was everything I did during that year, which was already quite a lot to push into a full-time job as well. But
Yeah, it's also harder to get all the work experience done if you're not taking a gap year. Like you have to squeeze it
mhm.
while you're doing your high school exams, and that's a lot.
Yeah, like I
Like,
can't stress enough the
yeah.
hours I have and everything were built in that one year. Everything before then was so minimal because I had no time.
Oh yeah. I know someone who did like 2,000 hours of work experience just to get into Edinburgh, but they got in the end.
Mhm.
That's insane
Mhm.
to do 2,000 hours.
That is, especially was that with a gap year or without?
I think she didn't take a gap year, but then she did another degree before going into vet med. So it was like
Okay.
science or something like
Still
that.
impressive, to be honest.
So I think it's really competitive to get in, especially with the ones in the UK.
I've met a few UK vets that have moved to Australia, and everything they tell me just sounds so competitive. It's impressive that they got in, but it's probably one of the reasons why I never applied. I was too scared. I was like, no, I'm not going to get in.
Are you still going to choose Australia if you get to apply again?
Yeah, I do like Australia. I've thought about doing like semesters abroad or something, but I don't know if that's something I will pursue yet.
Do you get to go abroad during your 6 years?
Well, you can do placements overseas. So I'm in the middle of booking one right now in New Zealand, which I'm excited about. And I'm hoping this is later on in my clinical years. I'm hoping I could do clinical years somewhere in Europe. I was thinking England, but obviously I'm nowhere near that.
Yeah, that's all of the questions I wanted to ask today. Do you have any questions, Kristen?
No, I think you've answered like a lot of my inquiries as well. So yeah, thank you again for your time, and it's nice talking to you.
Thank you for having me.